Out just to maneuver. We in the Navy think they must be going to do something.
Saturday, I went in without Hosmer and plotted the information that I had, and I was excited enough about finding the fleet was 500 miles north of Hawaiian Islands to drive to his home that Saturday afternoon and tell him what I had found and where it was, rather than giving any of this information by phone to him. However, we surmised between us something was going to happen, and whether it was definitely going to be the island.
The night before the attack, as the Japanese spy prepared to make his final signals, his original message to Tokyo was noticed by a translator in Navy intelligence in Washington. Dorothy Edgers, newly appointed to the section, asked her brother, Fred Woodruff, who worked alongside her, whether she should stay late that afternoon to work on it.
I looked at it, and I thought it was of sufficient interest. The subject matter was, as far as intelligence procedure, I thought was rather childish and amateurish. Establishing bonfires here, the lights in the window there. The subject matter I couldn't think of being too important. However, the mere fact that a consul general in an important city is reporting it to the Foreign Office, the mere fact that this was being done, to me, seemed to be of some significance. Lieutenant Commander Kramer, who was at that time the head of Up 20GZ, which was the translation section, came in, and I hear that she asked him, showed him this message and asked his opinion of it. And he sort of took it lightly, which was sort of a disappointment to my sister, I believe. I think she thought that the information in there was of interest, and I think that she felt that it should be given attention. However, Lieutenant Commander Kramer thought that it's nothing there, that it couldn't wait until, say, next week. And so that was pretty much that.
That night, Japanese submarines off the island, watching for the final signals from the beach house, would also have been listening to sounds of Saturday night activity in Honolulu. At the Navy Department that Saturday, Commander Kramer, having dealt with the strange message about lights and bonfires, was in the Office of Naval Intelligence. That morning, Ogg had placed a strike force 500 miles north of Pearl Harbor. But when Johann Raneft visited the office that afternoon and asked again about the carriers, he was shown a position due west of Honolulu. Raneft noted in his diary, "No one among us mentions the possibility of an attack on Pearl Harbor." At the Japanese embassy in Washington, as the remnants of codes and papers were destroyed, the last message of peace was intercepted. Roosevelt, when shown the message, declared, "This means war," but dictated no warnings. General George Marshall, the man who should have acted, was nowhere to be found. Colonel Rufus Bratton was responsible for keeping Marshall supplied with such vital information. For Bratton, Marshall's sudden unavailability at a time when America was on the brink of war could not have been accidental. Colonel William Heimlich, a fellow officer, heard directly of Bratton's frustration.
Colonel James Compton told me what I am about to tell you, and I later heard it from Colonel Bratton himself. On the morning of December 7th, 1941, Colonel Bratton called Compton at his home and asked him to come immediately to his, Bratton's, office. As he came in the office at about 6 o'clock, he found a relaxed Bratton seated at his desk with his feet up on it. And he said, "Jimmy, come in. They're going to lower the boom on us, and I need a witness. Colonel Compton seated himself, and Bratton made his first call to the Chief of Staff. His aim, of course, was to tell the Chief of Staff that, in his opinion, the intercepts and the information which he had available showed clearly that the Japanese were about to attack. He continued to call for the next several hours. Each time, the person taking the call reported to Bratton that General Marshall, the Chief of Staff, was out riding. Each time, out riding. And finally, in disgust, Bratton turned to Compton and said, "Jimmy, I'm going to make this the most famous horseback ride since Paul Revere."
Marshall eventually arrived to learn that Secretary of State Hull was to be given the note at exactly 1 p.m. In the Central Pacific, it was still dark. The Akagi and the other 5 carriers, now less than 200 miles from Pearl Harbor, swung into the wind for action stations. The danger to Pearl Harbor was suddenly real to Marshall, but his message to General Short, at long last warning him to be on guard, was sent deferred precedence. It was never to reach him in time. For Short and Kimmel and all their soldiers and sailors, it was a sunny start to just one more lazy, peaceful Hawaiian Sunday morning.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. It will be recorded that the distance of Hawaii from Japan makes it obvious that the attack was deliberately planned many days or even weeks ago.
On December 8, 1941, the United States of America declared war on Japan. 3 days later, Germany and Italy in turn declared war on the United States. Winston Churchill, when he heard of America's decision, later admitted, "Satiated with emotion, I went to bed and slept the sleep of the thankful and the saved." For nearly 50 years, one question has been repeatedly asked. Did Roosevelt allow Pearl Harbor to happen so that the surprise attack would give him the excuse to take America into the Second World War? The new evidence that has come to light strongly suggests that he did. It is now clear that Roosevelt and his advisors knew far more than was openly admitted at any of the 9 separate inquiries into the attack. William Casey, a former director of the CIA, was in a position to testify where some of that information came from. In his book, Casey says quite openly that the British told the Americans that a Japanese fleet was heading east across the Pacific towards Hawaii. It is now known that Churchill used this intelligence to give British commanders in the Far East early warning of the imminence of a Japanese attack. But no similar warnings were ever sent from Roosevelt to the American commanders in the Pacific. This fact alone suggests a degree of culpability on the part of the president that cannot have been so strongly argued before now. 2 months after the attack, a commission of inquiry judged General Short and Admiral Kimmel to have been guilty of dereliction of duty. Subjected to this public criticism, threats on their lives, and already relieved of their commands, both men resigned from active service. Later hearings cleared them of this serious charge, but until the end of their lives, most Americans held them personally responsible for the grief and national humiliation that was Pearl Harbor.